In 1992, a freeway crew near San Diego uncovered the bones of a mastodon that had been smashed open from the inside, with heavy stones lying right beside them that looked exactly like hammers. And when scientists finally dated the site, the number came back at 130,000 years. That number should be impossible. Every textbook will tell you that human beings did not set foot in the Americas until roughly 15,000 years ago. This one site is claiming that something was already here, deliberately breaking bones with stone tools, more than 100,000 years before that. So, it is either one of the most important discoveries in the history of American archaeology, or one of its biggest mistakes. And more than 30 years later, the world's experts still cannot agree which. Stay with me, because this one is genuinely unsolved. Start with the day it came out of the ground. It is November 1992. A road crew is expanding State Route 54 in San Diego County, and by law, a paleontologist has to be on call in case the digging turns up fossils. That paleontologist is Richard Cerutti from the San Diego Natural History Museum. When a backhoe operator starts pulling up broken bone, Cerutti stops the machine cold. Over the next several months, his team, led by museum paleontologist Tom Demir, carefully excavates the site by hand. And what they find does not look like a normal fossil. It is not a mastodon skeleton lying peacefully where the animal died. The bones are broken, smashed, in a very particular way. Two heavy femur balls, the round ends of the thigh bones, sit side by side, one facing up and one facing down, broken in the very same manner, which is not how bones usually come to rest by accident. And scattered among them are 5 large stones, heavy cobbles, that have no business being there in that fine, soft sand. Those 5 stones would go on to start one of the fiercest fights in modern science. Here is why the team believed a human hand was involved. First, the breaks. The heavy limb bones are spiral fractured, a spiraling, twisting kind of break that only happens when a bone is fresh and full of life, not when an old fossil snaps. It is the exact pattern you see at much later sites, where ancient people smashed animal bones to get at the rich marrow inside. Second, the stones. Those 5 cobbles show impact marks and wear, and they sit exactly where you would expect hammers and anvils, far too heavy to have simply drifted in with the gentle sediment around them. And third, the team put it to the test. They took the bones of an elephant, the mastodon's closest living relative, and struck them the same way. They produced the same fractures. So, something broke these bones on purpose. To find out when, the team needed a date. And the date is where the whole story tips into the impossible. The bones were far too old for radiocarbon dating, which fades out after about 50,000 years, so the team turned to a different clock. Using a method called uranium-thorium dating, which reads the slow radioactive decay locked inside the bone itself, a geologist with the U.S. Geological Survey measured the age of the remains. The result was 130,700 years, give or take about 9,400. In 2017, the team published that finding in Nature, one of the most respected scientific journals on the planet. Tom Demir said it plainly. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and the claim really is extraordinary. Because 130,000 years ago, our own species, Homo sapiens, had barely begun to leave Africa. So whatever cracked these bones in California could not have been us. It would have to be some other unidentified species of human, an unknown relative walking the California coast during the warm period between 2 ice ages. If correct, it would make this the oldest archaeological site in the Americas by more than 100,000 years, and it would tear a hole straight through the accepted story of how humanity spread across the earth. Think about what that world looked like. 130,000 years ago, in the warm gap between two ice ages, the coast of California was roamed by mastodons, dire wolves, and giant ground sloths. Our species was still in Africa. The Neanderthals were an ocean away in Europe. So if someone was truly here, kneeling over this carcass with a stone in their hand, we do not know who they were. That missing name is part of what makes the claim so hard to swallow and so hard to fully dismiss, which is exactly why a large part of the scientific world refused to accept it. The pushback was immediate, and it was harsh. To understand why, you have to see how far this date reaches. For decades, the oldest solid evidence of people in the Americas sat at roughly 13,000 to 16,000 years. Cerutti was claiming a date almost 10 times older than that. For a leap that enormous, critics argued, the evidence had holes you could drive a backhoe through. And that was not just a figure of speech. The whole site had been ripped open by heavy construction equipment. A modern excavator, they pointed out, can crack bones and shove stones around just as easily as any ancient hand could. Then came the bigger problem. There were no human bones at the site, not a single one. And there were no clear tools. Every widely accepted early human site comes with unmistakable stone tools, blades, sharp flakes, the leftover debris of tool making. Here, there were 5 suggestive rocks and nothing else. One prominent archaeologist argued that proving people were here this early demands unquestionable stone artifacts, and at Cerutti there were none. Another called the absence of tools damning. A third said, flatly, that he simply was not buying it. The broken bones, the skeptics argued, could have come from trampling by other animals, from natural geological forces, from the construction machinery, from almost anything other than a toolmaker who lived 100 to 30,000 years ago. The stones themselves, they suggested, might be nothing more than ordinary rocks that nature had cracked and rounded, a trick of geology mistaken for the work of a hand. In their view, this was not a discovery. It was a pile of rocks and roadwork that had fooled some very serious people. But the original team did not back down. In 2020, they went back to the stones with new technology, using microscopes and lasers to examine the surfaces. And they reported finding microscopic traces of mastodon bone clinging to the worn, upward-facing sides of the cobbles, the exact surfaces that would have taken the blows, and almost nowhere else. To them, that was the moment the hammer met the bone, frozen in place for 130,000 years. To the skeptics, it was interesting, but still not proof that a human being was holding the hammer. The bone could have touched the stone in other ways. And that is precisely where the story sits today. The bones are real. The strange, deliberate-looking breaks are real. The 130,000-year date is real. What no one has been able to prove, either way, is who or what actually did it. If the site is right, an unknown kind of human reached the Americas more than 100,000 years before anyone thought possible, and a huge part of the human story will have to be rewritten. If it is wrong, it is broken rock and bad luck. Extraordinary claims demand extraordinary evidence. The Cerutti mastodon has the claim. The final evidence is still buried somewhere between a smashed bone and a backhoe, and no one has dug it out yet.